Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to 2CTV with another exclusive interview. This time we are joined by, oh yes, your favorite Apostate Prophet is on the channel today. And as we speak, this is actually a follow-up live update after what we reported about an hour ago that Yahya Sinwar of Gaza is now Yahya Sinwaz, and he's now gone. Obviously, it's been a tough day for the French government, for the British Labour Party, for the US government, for the US Democrats, for South Africa, the BBC, CNN. So our thoughts and prayers are with all those listed. But let's talk to Pastor Prophet. Ridwan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you so much, Maya. It's a great pleasure to be here. I've been following you for quite a while.
Sound like a
I'm doing
stalker?
very, very well. Yeah, yeah, I am. I'm a stalker.
um, so, for those who might not be familiar with you, obviously, tell us more about yourself. Where you're from? What's your name? What are you doing?
I can do that. I can do that. So, excuse me. I'm a little bit excited, in a very good mood because of the news of Yahya Sinwar. So
Yeah, well,
it's hard to contain
actually, let's
myself.
start. But give me your reaction about Yahya, and then we'll talk about you.
Well, I'm very, very happy. The news are coming in. We already have a photo of his body, surrounded by IDF soldiers, reservists. Apparently, he was taken out by a 9-month IDF reservist or something like that.
Mm.
So, very, very nicely done. They got him. They killed him. They tried to get him for such a long time. The funny thing with Yahya Sinwar is also that when he was captured back in the day, in 2011, Israel had him, and he had a brain tumor, and Israel treated his brain tumor and released him. Now they have finally taken out the actual cancer that is Yahya Sinwar himself, and thereby taking out the major names of Hamas that were around before October 7th. So it's fantastic.
Did they at least charge him, or was it like the UK's NHS when it's just free healthcare? I hope they charged him money for the
No,
surgery.
it's Israeli taxpayer money cared for his brain tumor. That's what took
That's
care of
lovely.
it.
Well, that brain is now has been eliminated.
Yeah.
So that was a waste of taxpayers' money. Let's talk about. It's a little bit too early to start drinking champagne or whatever. But tell us about yourself. Obviously, you have a very strong YouTube channel talking about the political ideology that came from the 7th century that pretends to be a religion. Yes, and you used to be one of those. What's happened?
That's a very, very Islamophobic description of things, but yeah. So I am a former Muslim of Turkish and German origin. So my parents are Turks. They went to Germany with my grandfather, who settled there and who wanted to work there and all that. So my parents kind of began living there, where I was then born, and my parents got very heavily into the whole Islam stuff, became extremely religious compared to their parents even, and basically brought me and my siblings, up in a very extremely religious Sunni Sufi household, where I also learned some really, really messed up things from very young age. The whole Jew story, of course, begins immediately when you are very, very tiny. I remember when I was in first grade, I learned on a weekend that in the near future we will probably fight the Jews and kill them, and the rocks and trees will say, "There is a Jew behind me, come and kill him." And I went to school telling my best friend about this. So.
Wow.
So, so basically, that is the background. I grew up in this environment, in this family that was very, very devout and sick. That they are still like that. They still are very heavily religious.
Mhm.
I was mostly apathetic, but also respectful toward religion in my youth. But then later on, in my late teens, I became very heavily invested into following the religion and studying it and practicing it and preaching
Mm.
it and praying every day and all that, until after reading the Quran several times. After the first reading, I suddenly had many, many doubts as I was reading, but I tried
A
to
lot of
suppress
questions.
them. Yeah, and I'm not supposed to ask. And I remember I asked my father when he came in one day and he saw me reading the Quran with a Turkish translation. I said, there are some things that I really don't understand and that I have questions about. And he said to me something along the lines of, I wouldn't recommend reading it in Turkish, but rather asking those who know. You should rather just try to read it, try to recite it in Arabic. So, I thought that was weird,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
that's apparently a general attitude. So, anyway, I read it a second time, and a third time. Eventually, I ended up not being able to suppress my questions, which I also didn't find any satisfying answer to, and left Islam after a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because obviously we'll continue to in terms of the journey and everything else. But when it comes to Turkey and the Turkish culture in general, it seems like, and my question is, because it seems like over the last 20 years, 20 to 30 years, a new wave started. That's why obviously Erdogan is now happening. It's a lot of people inside Turkey. Because obviously there was this golden period in the 80s and 90s, and Turkey was becoming like more modernized and everything else. In fact, in Iran, after the 1979 revolution thing, about 10 years after, we had these satellites going to Iran, and everybody was watching Turkish TV because Turkish TV was like Western, was like European TV. And then it seems like, and I think Erdogan is a product of that wave of a new kind of fundamentalist version of Turkish Islamic side, which I wasn't expecting again in Turkey. So, what do you think happened there over the last few decades?
I think it's actually it is actually a result of the very secularist Turkish ideology
Mm-hmm.
that shaped Turkey after the fall of the Ottoman Empire. So when the Ottoman Empire fell, which was obviously an Islamic empire, Ataturk and his secular movement came along, and they were very heavily against the Islamist aspect and Islamist past. Ataturk spoke a lot against it, and he made it very clear that the Turkish people should leave the Eastern and Arab and Islamic way behind and should, Westernize. They should look at the West. They should adopt things from the West. They should be like the West and eventually work toward even surpassing the West in being secular and modern and all that. The issue is all of that is good and well, but the issue with that is that the population,
Mm.
half of the population, or maybe even more, most of the population, didn't really wasn't really on the same page.
Yeah.
And Ataturk's government basically suppressed elements of the population and banned them in order to enforce this westernization and secularization, which then led to resentment and resistance, which they also then brutally suppressed. That is a dark aspect of the
Yeah.
Turkish.
Some might argue the same thing happened, similar thing happened in Iran because Reza Shah, the father of obviously the last king, Muhammad Reza, in the early 20th century, he basically also did a similar thing where he basically modernized Iran and he basically suppressed the Islamic practices, including obviously hijab and everything else. He was literally going around taking off the hijab. And it generally worked, but there was still a chunk of society that actually became slightly more fundamentalist. So, I mean, I think the Iranians got slightly lucky, despite the Islamic Republic of Iran, the actual just a small group of kind of fundamentalist working class religious people. I think because they're Shia rather than Sunni, they're slightly less harmful. They're not completely jihadi. But what they did was, yes, resentfulness, and then obviously they helped the Islamic occupiers in '79. They were like, yeah, let's create the Islamic Republic, and then even they now regret it. But I think it's similar kind of strategy both in
There's
Turkey
also
and
an element in Iran, for example. You actually had a very successful, well, not successful in establishing a proper system, but a successful revolution of the Islamic revolutionaries that took advantage of the left and then succeeded with the revolution, then immediately started cracking down on the left that helped them and started executing them, banning everything else. The fact that in Iran the Islamic revolution was so strong and so successful, and then immediately started exerting their power and suppressing everybody else and basically choking the own population, I think led to the fact that Iranians very, very quickly got sick of it and are nowadays just totally either apathetic or opposed to their Islamist regime. In Turkey, for example, you had the Islamic Revivalism that slowly crept up. You had, however, in the 80s, for example, you had a military coup that came in and that said, okay, We are here to restore order and suppress communists, fascists, religious aspects, and everyone, and will restore complete secularism. So they banned things again. They somehow took power and only delayed the Islamic revivalist movement, which then again with Erdogan in 2000 started rising slowly. So here is the thing: when these suppressed aspects, no matter how bad they are, when they are slowly allowed to exist, they will, creep up and establish themselves, like in Turkey. When, on the other hand, they finally take over and start suppressing their opponents, then you will have a strong reaction from the secular population. It just goes
Yeah.
both ways. Both the Islamists react strongly and the secularists react strongly when oppressed.
That's very true. On this issue, we will kind of. I want to ask you about why the West is not learning from all these examples. But before we do that, actually, quickly going to Yasser Arafat again, because you've made a lot of videos on your channel. Obviously, check out his channel, guys. And also, if you guys are watching this live, we'll get your reaction, some of the live chat as well. So keep bringing the chats. But you've made a lot of videos, informative videos about obviously the book and everything else and the Islamic ideology. It's specifically about the name Yahweh and how obviously the obviously in terms of the Islamic side they just say Allah, but there are names that are mentioned in the book that comes from Yahweh, including Yahya Sinwar, right? So tell everyone what that's about and what Yahya actually meant before he died.
It's very funny that you would bring that up. It's one of my favorite topics that I went into on my own channel, where I talked about how Allah got his name wrong and how Islam has these names that are theophoric names that include the name Yahweh. So theophoric name is a name that includes the name of the deity that the people believe in. For example, when you have Abdullah in Islam, that means servant of Allah. That's a theophoric name. However, Islam also has other names such as Yahya, for example, that are theophoric names which reference Yahweh, the actual name, the eternal name of the God of the Bible. The problem here is that Islam doesn't ever notice or recognize that God's name or that Allah's name is Yahweh, because Muhammad didn't know. He didn't understand, because the Christians and Jews never mentioned the name, because they say Lord, Adonai, or Hashem, Father, or something else. Or Father instead. So Muslims adopted certain names from Jewish prophets, Jewish figures, including Jesus, which is also a theophoric name for Yahweh. And Yahya here, in this case, comes from one of two sources, which is Yohanan or Yahya, both of which are, again, theophoric names about Yahweh. Yahya would mean Yah lives, and Yohanan would mean Yah is gracious. So it's quite funny that that we have Yahya Sinwar today dying for the Islamists, but his name is actually totally about Yahweh.
Yahya is now Noya, because it doesn't exist anymore. It's going to be a lot of memes, guys. Expect a lot of memes. I've already seen some pictures and messages from my sources in Iran. They're already celebrating as well. Every time someone gets eliminated by the IDF, I would say in Iran, they say they've been cutlets, so it's like a barbecue, like a kebab. So they're going around giving kebab to each other. There's interesting, because in Iran, obviously, because actually one of the biggest disservices that has been done to the Islamic ideology and everything else is actually because of the Islamic Republic. My generation, all the kids, because it was like forced onto them in a very incompetent way. The Shia Islamic Republic of Iran, and they're not really that competent when it comes to propaganda inside. So the way they were pushing it, basically created a lot of kids growing up now, and they are the kids who are now doing the uprising. There are two massive waves. One is the conversion to Christianity and also atheism. So a lot of people just becoming atheists, and it's all thanks to the Islamic Republic. Like, what sort of idiots that thought they would be good to do what basically the same style of 7th century. Even in 7th century, it didn't really work, because the only way they could convert people was by forced takeover war, right? It wasn't based on preaching. And isn't that one of the main differences, for example, when it comes to the Abrahamic side? So you've got obviously in terms of Christianity, it's able to do it through preaching conversion, but Islam never did. Because can you explain that? Because a lot of people in the West think that Islam is growing because of conversion rate.
Yeah, this is actually a big misunderstanding that people have about the spread of Christianity. They will say that religion spreads by force or by the sword
Mm,
and all that. And of course, there are
mm,
aspects of Christian history where Christianity established itself in certain
mm,
parts of the world through different things like, I don't know, conquest, colonization, and all that. Where then,
yeah,
after colonizing a place, not in the name of religion, but
yeah,
for different reasons, they then also started preaching Christianity and so on. However, the difference here is in the beginnings of Christianity, in the first centuries of Christianity, until the Roman conversion to
mm,
Christianity, Christianity mostly and vastly spread by preaching, by missionary work, by people going around, the earliest apostles and others going around and preaching the gospel, preaching Jesus to
mm,
different communities and making it popular and spreading it, which is how Christianity started growing from a Jewish religion. It was
yeah,
merely considered a Jewish religion in the beginning, or a Jewish movement, into its own religion that was then recognized and protected, and eventually, adopted by the Roman Empire.
yeah,
Islam was never like that. Islam started immediately after, in Muhammad's lifetime, when he went to Medina and
yeah,
established his Islamic State. It immediately started out as a violent religion, as a military religion, which also preaches in the Quran, in chapter 9, verse 29, especially, there is an eternal command for all times, which says, fight those who do not believe in Allah and in Muhammad and the last day, and who do not adopt the religion of truth, meaning
yeah.
Islam, among the Jews and Christians, until they are humiliated and pay the jizya, protection money. So it commands Muslims to go and fight the Jews and Christians, and also all the others, and humiliate them and turn them into subjects unless they convert to Islam, which means it compels him to convert to Islam. And Muhammad himself also said, I have been sent to fight the people until they testify that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. And this is how Islam spread from the beginning until the 20th century, when it was brutally defeated.
But the fascinating part about a lot of it is copy and paste. But as you've also mentioned on your channel, is they didn't interpret it properly, or sometimes maybe they just change it on purpose, right? Like for example, the line that says, "If you kill one man, you've killed all humanity." Obviously, that's already been debunked. But there's one interesting thing about it is that Muhammad being the final prophet and everything else, they kind of forgot towards the end because all the other Abrahamic figures, the Avengers, let's just call them, they had some sort of magic, they had some sort of like miracle, splitting the sea and everything else, red wine coming, and then Muhammad like, oh, you forgot to add that. Let's just say he split the moon for no reason, and like he flew to heaven with on a horse. Why did he do that for? Just like let's add some miracles at the end. What do you think will happen there in terms of the copy and paste culture?
Yeah, it's very funny when you read the Quran. There are many instances in the Quran itself where it says that the people around him are repeatedly asking him for a miracle, for a sign from Allah, and the Quran's response to it is basically that even if Allah showed a miracle, they would not believe anyway. So it basically says, "Oh, you won't believe it anyway, so no miracle for you guys." And then the idea is generally is basically that the Quran itself is the miracle, and that you're
Yeah,
supposed to recognize that miracle. And it's a terrible book. I mean, seriously, for those who haven't read it,
the
uh,
chapters are not in order. It makes no sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't even take my word for it. Get the book, start reading it. It's all over the place. It has no flow. It's not a page turner at all by any means. It is boring, repetitive, nonsensical.
But yeah, go on, finish.
And the only thing that they had left when Muhammad died was these vague reports about how in his lifetime they asked for a miracle and then the moon was split, and he said, "Look, that's it." But nobody saw it. Nobody else saw it.
I'm guessing that caused climate change. But one thing is obviously like you had obviously the Torah, then Talmud became basically just the rabbis' rules and regulations, right, about society life. At first, the whole point of the Quran was this is the final book. This covers everything, and then they still ended up doing their own post-Quran books anyway, and they're still
Yeah.
doing it. So the last one was Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran in 1979. But one of my favorite things about this is I've mentioned this on this channel once. One of my favorite regulations is if you're sleeping upstairs and your aunt is sleeping downstairs. And there's an earthquake, and you happen to be on top of your aunt, and somehow she gets pregnant. That kid won't be a bastard. I'm like, And I had to double check because people were debunking this. Then I had to go read it in Persian. And I was like, he actually said it. I was like, why? Somebody did that. I think most of the rules and regulations coming from that side, 7th century, was basically someone did something, like added to the list. Regulation.
Didn't Khomeini also say something about out of necessity having sex with animals or something like that?
Yeah. But if you do it with a camel or something like that, then there are rules, guys. There are absolute rules. You're not allowed to kill and sell the meat to your to your neighborhood, to your village. You can sell it to the village next door, but not. Why next door? Also, why would you want to eat that after? Oh, it's the logic.
You mentioned the Talmud and how Islam adopted things. I just went to with David Wood together to the Holocaust Museum in DC, and he came up to me and said, "Hey, they have Quran chapter 5 verse 32 there," and I'm like, "Are you serious?" And I walk over there, and he's like, "Oh, look, it's actually the Talmud. It says whoever destroys a single life destroys the entire world.
It comes from
and
there,
whoever saves a single life saves the entire world." Talmud. And it's funny that he made that joke. I was very relieved when I saw this because I thought for a second seriously that they had the Quran verse on there. But the Quran adopted this from the Talmud.
But they changed it, didn't they?
They changed it, and it also says that that this is what Allah told the children of Israel. Allah told the children of Israel, whoever
only children of Israel you're not allowed to kill.
yes. And the thing is, it's from the Talmud. It's not from the Torah. It's not a revelation. It's something that the rabbis wrote to explain the Torah. But apparently Muhammad heard it from the Jews that were in his presence and misunderstood and thought that this is a revelation from their God. So he adopted it into the Quran. It's
sort of like 200 years from now, 500 years from now, people will come back and say, Church of England and Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, allowing, for example, gay marriage or like the LGBT movement going into church. Then they would say, "Oh, that's from basically the Bible, the God said." No, it was post-Bible. Church of England decided to do it. Doesn't mean that's the same thing. Like Talmud saying something doesn't mean Torah said it. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Now we're speaking about
it would be like people saying that. It would be like them saying, "And Jesus said it is okay for gays to marry" or something like that. Yeah.
Well, no, about Jesus was a Muslim, so apparently. Well, I love how they use the word you don't convert to Islam, you revert to it. Like we're all Muslim basically.
Yeah, that's the idea that everyone is that it is in everyone's nature to be a Muslim. So when you convert to Islam, you're basically going back to your nature and thereby reverting. That's why they prefer to use that word, which is just nonsensical.
But I really like bacon. So there is this thing right now. What's going on? What do you think? Because you obviously you've experienced Germany, but also America over the last few years. It's kind of started slowly over the last 10, 15 years. Yeah, obviously across universities and everything else, the lefties. But it seems like it's becoming fashionable, the Islamic kind of ideology. Not that they don't know anything about it. They haven't read the book. But it seems like the left, the global left, are now promoting, not just in the sake of Gaza or the civilians and Palestinians. No. It's just everything happening at the same time. Bin Laden is now cool and fashionable and everything else. What sort of lesson can they learn from Turkey, from Iran, from everything else? And why is it happening?
It's just it's hard to explain. It is more popular in the English-speaking world, in the Anglophone world, in the United Kingdom and in the US, for example, compared to Germany. I mean, I grew up in Germany. I know how Germans thought back when I was there. I visited Germany later on. I still understand how they are nowadays. When I compare their attitude toward Muslim immigration and toward Islam with the English attitude, with the British attitude, for example, the British seem to be much more naive when it comes to Islam and Muslim immigration and all that. Seem to be much less about how it is dangerous and it is violent and all that. They seem to be. I don't understand why, but the English-speaking world, the English world, seems to be more weirdly tolerant and naive about Islam. Maybe it's because there was always a little channel between England and the rest of Europe that actually had to deal with Islamic invasions.
Yeah.
But it's still, even when it comes to Europe, even when it comes to Germany and the other European countries, there is still a naivety and still a misunderstanding of what Islam is, of how Muslim culture is, of how Islam is actually at the root, at the core of much of the division, of conflict, of war, and all and hate and all that. They refuse to see that, and the idea is basically, look, we had religion ruling over us in the past. We were all dominated by one aspect of Christianity, and it led to wars. But once we got rid of it, once we replaced it with secular rule, things we stopped fighting each other. And like Islam is just the same thing. This is kind of the whole mindset that people have, and all of that is just a complete misinterpretation of history and of religion itself. They don't get it. It's just they have to experience it and see it until they understand how messed up and how oppressive Islam is. And there is also a very, very, very naive, but also, I don't know what to call it, but an interestingly white, you could almost ironically say it's a white supremacist idea, because you will have white people in the West looking at their own culture and their own tradition and their own religion and saying, oh no, we have to move away from that, we have to make progress and leave all those things behind.
You've done the progress,
when
idiots.
when they look at Muslim culture, they're like, no, we have to respect everything exactly as it is. Anything else would be Islamophobic or bigoted or racist. What about our progress? What about our attempt to move away from what oppresses us?
I still want reparations for the Muslim Empire slavery, but apparently they can't ask for that. Anyway, let's get some reaction on the live chat, and some people have some questions for you as well. Bob from Israel says, on the last day of Sukkot, he rampaged. Oh, they're talking about Yahya Simba. On the first day of Sukkot, we got him. God is great. Yes, Allah is great. Alan Snackbar, as we say on this channel. Cara Grace says, loving this broadcast, been waiting to see my two favorite YouTubers together. But unfortunately, we couldn't get your two favorite YouTubers, so we got me and Also, if now that we're making racist jokes apparently about white people, did you know that your name basically sounds like a van that's been gone rid of? Ridvan is Ridvan. Amazing. Yes. How do you actually pronounce it in Turkish? It's
Ridvan.
Ridvan, yeah.
It's basically a Turkified version of Ridwan, which is Arabic.
Or Rizvan, or because I think in Iranian you would say Rizvan. Yeah.
You would say in Iranian you would say Rizvan, in Arabic you would say Ridwan. Something like that.
Yeah. Okay, we got another one. Is there any evidence that Hamas funding streams or Hezbollah drug trafficking networks are being dismantled and we're turning against them? Do you know anything about that?
Any evidence that Hamas funding streams or Hezbollah drug trafficking networks are being dismantled? I'm not entirely. I wouldn't say. I would say that I wouldn't be comfortable talking about that aspect, considering that I haven't followed it as closely. So I'm not entirely sure. I'm more about the whole military and ideological aspect at the moment.
Yes. Esther says, love Apostate Prophet from Israel. We got a few people from Israel. Another one, been waiting for this clap for such a long time. Yeah, we were supposed to do it ages ago. Nancy from Canada, love hearing your memoirs, AP. The problem with any cult is it seems that no one talks or questions. Thank you for your videos.
Thank you.
Actually, on this, what do you think? I mean, there definitely have been thinkers and people from the Arab world over the last few centuries that, question things, or maybe they got shut down, or maybe they just wrote books. Why do you think this never became a wave? Like, for example, we had the Enlightenment, in Western Europe and everywhere else when it came to even Christianity. Then, Charles Darwin, everything else. From the Islamic world, we didn't really have any for the last few centuries, until now, really. I mean, thanks to social media and everything else, people are speaking out. Was it because their voices were shut down? Anybody that questioned, or they just didn't have it in their blood?
Well, I think there is a fundamental difference between Christianity and Judaism in that, not Judaism. Judaism because I see the Israel flag. There is a fundamental difference between Christianity and Islam because when we speak of the Enlightenment, for example, even the Enlightenment is not something that happened, that came against Christianity. It is
Yeah.
something that came out of Christianity. So it is Christian culture itself. It is
Mm.
the Christian way of thinking, the Christian way of believing, the Christian way of living itself that created most of the revolutionary, movements, revolutionary findings in the West that really helped the West go
Mm.
forward significantly. The printing press was because of Christianity.
Yeah.
The scientific revolution was because of Christianity. The Enlightenment was led by Christians, and so on. So it wasn't non-Christian critics of Christianity. It was Christians themselves who led these revolutionary movements and contributed to all the questioning and all that. The Protestant Reformation was a Christian movement. In Islam, it's not quite that way. In Islam, you have more of an ultra traditionalist rejection of any attempt to change things. In Islam, it is Muslims. If you ask Muslims, they will explicitly be happy about the fact that their religion has not been changed a bit since the 7th century. They will say, "Oh no, everything is exactly as it was when Muhammad was there, and
As
we
if
are
it's a good
proud
thing.
of." Yeah. That's not supposed to be a good thing. That's a bad thing.
It's
It's
great, but it is right in terms of a lot of things that came from the Christian thinking and mentality. For example, even the modern structured capitalism is due to the Christian culture, and even the Holy Roman Empire and Vatican, the Catholic Church. The concept of, for example, McDonald's, that is the franchise, actually comes from indirectly the way the Catholic Church works in terms of literally any random church, Catholic church in England and in somewhere else, they will follow the same thing at the same time on the same day. So actually, we could blame the creation of McDonald's on Christianity. It's not all positive.
rightly so.
Actually, I love
Rightly so.
McDonald's. um,
Rightly so. Islam has this aspect that is like, in the earliest centuries, there were certain people who questioned and who tried to interpret things differently. They had the early discussions, which you also had in Christianity, for example. In Christianity, the early people who had different disagreements and understandings of the doctrines and who helped, the shaping of it were mostly, I will say, not completely, but mostly just accepted as different fathers, different thinkers. Nowadays, they're referred to as the church fathers, for example.
Yeah.
In Islam, it didn't quite go that way. In Islam, when you had some disagreements on certain major things, that led to persecution and to death. Many early Muslims who are nowadays respected by certain, traditionalist followers were directly imprisoned and executed. People who tried to present rationalism into Islam were taken out and executed. So you have this difference in Judaism, in rabbinic Judaism. It is known and celebrated that the earliest rabbis were people who just had huge disagreements and who spent their entire day, discussing about the tiniest details. In Christianity, you celebrate these people. In Islam, they were killed. It's just a different way of thinking.
Also, speaking of oppression, I've just checked this live stream, which is still ongoing, has already been demonetized. So thanks for that. Anyway, it's worth it. Let's see what else we have. Dr. Zulan from Israel says, Israeli news, Sinbad was hiding, boy. What? He was hiding like a rat. Oh, yeah, it's just about, yeah. They were still celebrating. Unfortunately, it's still too early to drink champagne. Later, maybe. Why don't they teach driver's ed and sex ed on the same day in Saudi Arabia? It's just too hard on the camels. All right, guys, be nice to Saudi. They're trying to improve themselves. Come on, guys. All right.
They're trying to be different.
Oh, no, exactly. You two guys are together. Yay. Sinbad's gone. Double yay.
It's kind of on me that it took so long for us to get together. I remember I contacted you like I don't know, months ago when I was in London, and you said, "Hey, let's do something together next week." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And then I'm like that. I never got back. And
No, I'm also bad when it comes to like just getting back together. And I was busy washing my hands. That's fine.
The funny thing is, when I contacted you, you had fewer subscribers than I did, and now you have significantly more than I do. So.
See? I waited until I go and I'll get you on the show. Nancy said Canadians are very concerned about offending Islamic people, and our soft attitude and our leadership has no backbone to call it out. Yeah, what do you think there's going to be a downfall of the West if they continue like this? Western Europe.
I think that at some point, Western people have to shake themselves up and wake up or something like that. I don't know, but I would say
Mm.
that it would not eventually lead to a complete downfall and
Mm.
takeover by the Islamists or anything. However, I do think that we are past of a point of no return, and I think that there will be. I don't know. It's these are of course just speculations, but I think it's not unreasonable to expect that in the
Mm.
future, in some of these Western countries, including in the UK, we will probably have separatist movements of Islamists trying to create within on the British Isles, try to create their own
Yeah.
Islamic country, for example, and say we no longer are part of the UK or something like that. I'm sure you will have attempts like these because it is inbuilt. It is part of Islam. And if you ask the Muslim apologists and the Muslim preachers and the Muslim scholars, they will go around proudly saying that it is their goal to establish an Islamic society and to re-establish the caliphate, the Islamic empire.
Well, Mohammed Hijab says it all the time, and the problem with Mohammed Hijab is, for example, and you've had your encounters with that idiot. The theoretically speaking, let's just say, for example, I don't know, Birmingham in England or Manchester or somewhere is now going to be separate. Like 50 years from now, 20 years from now. The issue with that is that people like Mohammed Hijab know this. You create an Islamic caliphate of Birmingham, and you're there, and all the white people have been kicked out. After a few years, because of the Islamic tendency and the lack of economic philosophy, prosperity will go down. Eventually, they're going to have to migrate back to England. And then they're going to... It makes no sense. Anywhere that they go, if you implement that ideology, because it's just full of misery and sadness, rather than, again, for example, the Christian culture is always about motivation. Just like basically, you do what you want to do, just as long as you basically don't be evil and have a family and actually get rich. I mean, that's also kind of changed. It's modernized compared to like the early days, but just be generous, do charity, but do whatever you want. Success is good. Whereas Islam is basically kind of that's where it goes hand in hand with Marxism, because it's both miserable and basically says, don't be rich. That's what they love each other, right?
Look at Lebanon. Lebanon was the one Christian majority country in the Middle East, in the Arab world, and it was known as the Switzerland of the Middle East. Beirut was known as the Paris of the Middle East, and so on. It was a very admirable, a beautiful place that people went to on vacation for tourism and so on, until the 70s, where then demographically the Muslims started forming the majority of the country, and then began saying, okay, it's time for things to change. We need to take over and impose our own ideas. Civil war started. After that change, Lebanon gradually turned into a shithole. Nowadays, it is one of the least happy places in the world. It has very low standards of living compared to how it used to be. It turned everything into a giant mess through Islamization. This is what happens. They take a beautiful place, they make it Islamic, and then they destroy it, and then they move on to the next.
And then they leave, go next place. Yeah.
Yeah. If the same thing, like if, for example, we're talking about the whole idea of Israel and Israel versus Hamas, Israel versus what's so-called Palestine, and then if, for example, today, right, if Jews who built Israel, not only built Israel from scratch, but also helped build Gaza and build the West Bank by their means, if these people said, okay, you know what, you're not right, but however, we have decided to be complete idiots, so we have decided to leave this place entirely and leave everything that we have to you guys so that you can create your own state and call it Palestine. If they did that, this place named Palestine would within a decade turn into a shithole and would experience a civil war, and they would want to go somewhere else.
Yeah, also, they won't be able to pronounce it because there's no P in Arabic. Anyway, there's another comment. Oh, Kirsty says, my beautiful daughter Abby has become a Muslim. I am broken. Well, that's This is actually quite interesting because we've seen a trend. It's not really a big kind of wave, but it's fashionable. We've seen on social media some white kids in Britain and America being converted. Do you think? Obviously, it's not good, but do you think a lot of them would be, as we call, detransitioning eventually, or as they grow up? Or because I don't think it's sustainable. You can't convert. You can't become. I don't know. I mean, apart from ginger jihadis, you can't really be a proper Islamic unless you've been completely brainwashed, right? If you're just an innocent young person, you will grow out of it, right?
Yeah, unless you're a ginger, as you said. But so there was a study about U.S. converts after 9/11, which found that 75% of Muslim converts end up leaving Islam within a few years.
Right.
The same thing is probably true in different places. The same thing might be true in the UK. It is just a phase. It is something that people do because they have a strong reaction to certain social things that are happening. And there are some people who convert and who actually go all in and who start creating a Muslim family, marrying a Muslim person, and then practicing it. For those, it is different. But even in those cases, I'm actually very sorry for lots of people who end up that way. I have received over the years so many emails, so many messages from women, especially, who said, please help. I don't know what to do. I married a Muslim man. I converted to Islam, but things didn't go quite as I thought they would. I have left Islam, but I also have children, and I'm in this and this situation, and they ask me for help. And I'm just, every single time I'm thinking, how can I even help you? It's like, the situation that you put yourself in is a very, very messy one. So the best thing that I can do is to tell people just to not be stupid, not be naive, and think
Yeah.
about and properly learn about what you are getting into before you get into it. And but I would still say that for most people who think of converting or who end up converting, I don't think that they're serious.
No. Yeah, absolutely. Also, this is a combination of the Western proxies and the Islamic side. They're combining. It's as Douglas Murray would say, it's masochism, and it's brought to you by sadists. So it's complete insanity. Let's read a couple more comments before we go. Oh my God, CAP! I arranged this to happen by asking Maya until he was sick of the questions and just went for the collab. Yeah, there were a number of people who were asking for years and years now. There's a comment about Gemini. Google's woke AI Gemini says, although the DNA evidence confirms Jewish heritage, it does not necessarily mean Columbus identified as Jewish. Oh, this Columbus as Jewish. Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, there is the news of Columbus allegedly being Jewish. There is the research that was presented. Apparently, that was done over decades, which says that we have enough evidence to assume that he was a Sephardic Jewish guy who converted and hid his identity or something. But yeah, the thing is, what does it matter, really?
No, exactly. Alef says, Maya, do you think there will be a party outside the Iranian embassy in London, like when Nasrallah Nasrallah, who is bringing the cutlet? I don't know. Maybe I might go to central London and see what's going on.
There should be. People should celebrate. It's a good
There
moment.
usually is. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, a quick update as well in regards to Ridvan, Apostate Prophet. He's also going to be doing a show segment thing on 2CTV Plus, which we are currently working on, and I think I'll also be going on his channel soon as well. So if you want to check that out, the best thing you can do is also obviously go on 2ctvplus.tv, sign up to 2ctv plus, and obviously don't forget to check out Apostate Prophet's YouTube channel. Just type in Apostate Prophet, it will come up, and subscribe to him as well. Any last few words?
Thank you so much. I appreciate this very, very much. I'm very happy that this happened, and we'll hopefully soon have you on my channel, and hope to do lots of great things together, and also stay away from Islam.
Absolutely. Alan Snackbar, thank you guys for watching. I'm Maya TC, and we are the media.